And why does he have that aversion? Because when he came on the national stage, he had this appearance. A lot of people took him to be, that goofy dad, maybe that Midwestern dad, lovable dork. Is that how Minnesotans see him, or do they see him as someone who is shirking away from the responsibility of saying, hey, I owned this fraud scheme that was happening under my watch?
I think you have to look at the kind of the spectrum and the timeline of his service. He ran in 2018 on One Minnesota, uniting the state. This is just after 2016. That was a very appealing message. Then we had a pandemic, not his fault, but how he responded to the pandemic became an issue. Then we had the killing of George Floyd and the riots. Again, not his doing, but how he handled it became the issue. He won re-election in 2022 against a fairly weak Republican opponent in a year when Democrats had a surge due to the Supreme Court on Dobbs. And then I think everybody was like, all right, we're going to set for the second term. Let's stabilize everything. And things over the last 3 years did not get more stable. In fact, Governor Walz, away from fraud, with a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, spent an $18 billion budget surplus. They raised taxes by $10 billion more. And in his third term, had he run, he would have faced a $9 billion deficit. So separate fraud. That does not have anything to do with fraud. Minnesotans just started to say, like, do we have a vision and a plan that we all can rally around for the future of the state? And I think that's what the other piece Governor Walz failed to figure out.
I know you said almost that his decision to drop out was death by 1,000 cuts. It wasn't one thing. It was a culmination of things. Was that last thing, though, the Nick Shirley video? Because that went massively viral, racked up hundreds of millions of views on social media. Vice President J.D. Vance tweeted about it, or posted on X rather. Elon Musk posted about it. I mean, it was really just shocking what the video, how much attention it gathered. News outlets, daycare workers there, they've pushed back on the claims that Nick Shirley was making. But was that the thing that pushed Walz over the edge?
I don't know if that video did it, but the fallout and the response to that video was it. I think it's a lesson in the way modern media and social media work. That video was posted on December 26th. It's a quiet time. It's a holiday time. People are spending more time with their phones. And there was a vacuum of response. There was literally no response from the governor's office for days. And that is what we saw in the days following the George Floyd riots. It's what we're seeing today. No public events after another audit came out yesterday that showed backdated documents. So this is the cycle. What I would also say is that people within his own party who wanted more independent audits done of state government really got fed up once Nick Shirley's video came out. And it gave them proof to say, you're losing the narrative, you're losing the facts. We talk a lot about separating signals and noise. Nick Shirley's video created a lot of noise, and it wasn't all entirely accurate. However, the threads of accuracy, the signals within that video that were fact and were real, are the things that are indefensible if you're the sitting governor of the state.
And now, obviously, this is a national story, but you've been covering it from the beginning. So when you're looking at how it gathered all of this attention, do you think the national dialogue surrounding the governor's race, as well as these fraud schemes in Minnesota, do you think anything's missing from that conversation?
That's a great question. I think in a short attention span world, I think any kind of audit or investigation takes time. And so I think the impatient American, the impatient Minnesotan wants all the news. They want all the information right now. So it's really tough to speculate on kind of what's missing. We are supposed to get a full report on some of the program audits at the end of January. That will give us, I think, a view of how wide this is, not how deep it is, but how many programs it impacts. The sense is right now, this is 12 to 14 state programs that are funded in part by the federal government. If that expands to 20 to 30, then that's a major issue. I would also say that there was a warning sign, and the warning signs on Walz came not just from local media, but CNN did a full investigation piece in October of 24 when he was running for vice president about 12 cases where he did not pay attention to independent audits. And so I would just urge your viewers to know that there's been reporting out there, but as with anything, what does it cause? Where is it at? Somebody, one of the reporters this week referred to this. Is this a Watergate, Minnesota moment? Is there so much stuff that we don't even know yet that it'll deteriorate trust for a long time? And I think that's what we'll follow for the next 11 months.
And to that point about deteriorating trust, I mean, is this Walz's legacy now? Is this the DFL's legacy in Minnesota now? Because I just can't get over that federal prosecutor saying this calls into question everything we know about the state. I mean, it sounds like what he's saying is everything we know about Minnesota essentially is a lie. Fraud was the norm here, not the outlier. What does that do to the legacy of Democrats and Walz?
I think the first thing you have to realize is Minnesota is a good government state. Minnesotans are not super conservative as a whole. They're not super liberal as a whole. They believe good government services are worth paying for. This calls that fundamental piece into doubt and erodes that trust. Now, there's plenty of parts of government that still work in Minnesota that aren't littered with fraud. But I've said this for a few years. I think what has been missed is the idea of getting back to the basics on education, back to the basics in public safety, back to the basics in good roads and good schools. And I think that's where, if Democrats survive, they have to focus this. And if the midterm is bad for Republicans nationally, but good for Republicans in Minnesota, that will give evidence that there is an independent streak. And if you don't trust the institution or the party running the institution, that's a warning sign, I think, for the future of all political parties and political leaders.